Welcome to this boot camp for technologists on how to effectively use online meetings to communicate with others. My name's Eric Miller, and we're going to talk about how to use the kind of tool that I'm using right now to communicate with other people more effectively in this new age where, even though we've been using it for years, everything's changed. So let's go ahead and get started. What's really caused the change, of course, is COVID-19. Everybody's seen this graphic or something similar to it. I'm recording this from my home as we speak. It's been a major impact on a lot of things and a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And one of them is how we have these online meetings. Who we work with has changed. What we work on has changed. When we work has changed. I know my hours have, I'm sure yours have as well. Where we work, we're home. Why we're working may have changed as well. The virus may have changed the motivation or the goal of your company or your group or yourself from a professional standpoint. And probably most significantly, how we do our jobs has changed in so many different ways that we never really predicted. A big one, of course, is how we do meetings. That has fundamentally changed. Even when we were using online meeting tools in the past, we were kind of working under the paradigm that we were in a meeting room. In fact, at my company, we would often actually all go to a meeting room and then log into the online meeting. So we would be sitting around the table. The other party would be sitting around the table. That's kind of how things worked until very recently. Now it's all individual at my desk at home interacting with other people. And that's been a big change. Like I said, it's been going around for a long time. My company has been using WebEx for a very long time. I think since around the time we started in the late 90s, early 2000s. Web meetings are not new. And if you're a scientist or an engineer or a programmer or an IT person, this is kind of your world. You've been kind of living in the online meeting world for a long time, and it's nothing really new or different, except who's in the meetings has changed. And this guy who is always, I got to have a face-to-face. I like to talk to people on the phone. I like to be there in person. He can't. So he's discovered a really simple tool called Zoom that makes online meetings very easy to use. And it's turned into the verb, let's do Zoom or let's Zoom. It's great. And he feels like it's just like being there. And now they want to have meetings that not only are online, but that involve the personal interaction that happened when you had the face-to-face meetings before. And that's the fundamental change. Now, as an engineer, I may have tossed this up. In fact, this is a slide from a training class that we do. And we toss this up on the screen, and then we'd talk. And we would go all over the place, and we'd answer questions. And this really served as a reference for the everybody on the meeting, as a common talking points. But it was really a very different way of communicating. So that's changed. And if it was just temporary, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it's worth spending time on getting good at these online meeting things. First of all, we're going to be here a while. I'm recording this at the end of April, probably another month at least. For those of us that can work at home easily, we'll be doing so for quite a while. So it's worth an investment. And the fact of the matter is that this guy who used to always want face-to-face meetings kind of gets it now, and he's going to want to have more of these quote-unquote Zoom meetings rather than travel and meet face-to-face. So we should be good at it, be better at our job because we know how to use these tools. What's fundamentally changed in these online meetings is that they're more social. It's not just about a meeting, it's about interacting, it's happy hours, it's sharing your day, showing your dog, or your coworker. That's all there. Um, we've turned the camera on and we've opened up the ability to show emotion. We're not just having a technical discussion anymore. We're really connecting with people. That's why we traveled, right? To create that emotional connection. And that's gone. So we're going to do it now using the online meeting tool. And that's also why body language is very important. How you come across on that camera, not just your face, but your whole body, is extremely important. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the coming discussion. So for those of us who've been using online meetings, or it's just something that we did, It's time to go back to school, up your game, get with the program, teach an old dog new tricks, adapt to the new normal. It is time to step up and be better at doing online meetings. So today we're going to go through a little bit of an introduction. We're going to go back to the basics of the fundamentals of business communication, because that's really important. That's what we're doing. We're communicating for business. We're going to talk about preparing for your online meeting. We're going to talk about getting value from that online meeting. We're going to go through 10 do's, 10 don'ts, and what was 10 tips, but after presenting this class twice, is now 15 tips. And then we're going to talk about what's next. And because this is a recording, we're not going to answer any questions, but when it's live, that's what we do there. So let's do some introductions first. My name's Eric Miller. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from UC Berkeley that I got back way in the old days of 1986. I'm also the co-founder and a principal at a company called PADT, which I'll talk about. I'm the chairman of the Arizona Tech Council and a regular contributor to the Phoenix Business Journal, and I host a podcast called All Things ANSYS. I'm also an entrepreneur in residence at the Arizona Commerce Authority's Venture Ready program, and I am a screener for our local angel group, Arizona Tech Investors. Also a board member of a group called BioExcel. So I do a lot of different things in a lot of different areas, but my main job is being one of the 3 owners at PADT. And about PADT, we were founded in 1994 by 4 turbo machinery engineers from what is now Honeywell, was Allied Signal at the time. And we do products and consulting. We sell and provide products and consulting to engineers. We're based in Tempe, Arizona at the ASU Research Park, and we have about 85-ish employees. What we do is that we've broken our company into 3 areas. Numerical simulation, which is a little bit over half of our business. Product development, which is kind of design, and then 3D printing, which a lot of people are very aware of, and that's about a third of our business. And we do all 3 of those things by either selling the tools that people use. So we're an ANSYS reseller, we're a Stratasys reseller, we sell scanners, we provide support to people who use those tools, and then we also provide services, consulting services for all 3 of these areas. So we have a group of engineers that do simulation, a group that does design and test, and a group that does 3D printing across a wide multitude of materials. Like I said, we're based in the Southwest here in Tempe, Arizona, and we have offices across the Southwest, everywhere from Texas to California, and this is kind of the region that we cover from a sales standpoint for ANSYS, as well as we do other things in different territories. We do consulting everywhere, and ANSYS Stratasys in the Four Corners region. We're very proud of some of the awards that we've won recently. The one that we're most proud of is our Customer Service Department of the Year award. Our tech support group for ANSYS won that, and it's quite an honor for them to win. Also, this class was originally created for the Arizona Technology Council. It's the state's premier technology trade organization. We have committees, we do events, we have member savings programs. It's a lot of different things that help our members do better. And we really exist to protect the innovators out there, the technology innovators. We believe that technology moves all of us forward, and we're completely dedicated to the future of Arizona. Bunch of upcoming events. This will probably change by the time you see this, but do check out, Google the Arizona Technology Council and go to their events page to see what's going on. So let's get started into the actual training here. Let's talk. Let's go back. Let's forget online. Forget that this camera is looking at me. Let's just talk about the fundamentals of business education, of business communication. How do we talk to each other in the business world? So let's start with the definition of what is communication. It's a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behaviors, right? It doesn't say words, it doesn't say letters, it doesn't say graphics. It says symbols, signs, or behavior. So what we do to exchange that information can take many different forms. And that's what we do when we communicate, right? So the question to ask is, what information are you exchanging? What symbols, signs, or behavior are you using that? What are the tools that you use to communicate? Your body language, a PowerPoint slide, a podcast, a face-to-face meeting. You know, what do we use, and how do we behave, and what signs do we use to help us? And when we're talking about business communication, you have to remember that the reason why we're communicating is to further some sort of business goal. We're exchanging information to further a business goal. Both parties in the communication, or all parties, multiple parties may be there. They're there for the simple reason that they want to further their unique individual business goals that are hopefully aligned across the table, virtual or real. So I always like to start with goals when we talk about communicating. So when you're looking to have a business communication, technical or non-technical, what do you want to accomplish? Is it to plan a project, review some results, secure a customer, educate a coworker, solve a problem? Maybe it's to interview a prospective employee, right? What is the goal of the communication? If you don't know that, you're not going to communicate well. It's really, really important. So you should go into every meeting with goals in mind. Whatever kind of meetings they are. Um, and it's good practice. This is meetings 101 to state them at the beginning and review them at the end, no matter what kind of communication you're using. Make sure everybody understands what are the goals of this communication, and review those goals at the end and make sure that you've met them. So after goals, you need to recognize what your role is. What are your role in the meeting? What role will you play during the meeting? And it can be everything. You can be there to document the meeting. You're just listening. Maybe it's a collaboration meeting. Maybe you're educating. Maybe you're learning. Maybe you're coordinating. Maybe you're there to disrupt something. Maybe you need to shake up the organization, and that's the point of the meeting. Maybe you're there to discourage some sort of an effort. It's not always a positive reason why you're sitting in a communication, a meeting. And maybe you're there to lead. Maybe that's the reason why you're there. So you need to understand which of those things, when you walk into a real or virtual room, what is your role in that communication? And of course, the most important part of communication, well, it's all important, but the one we need to focus on, because we're usually really bad at it, is listening. It's so, so important. So the number one rule that you can give to anybody out there is to just shut up and listen. It's so very, very important to not keep talking and not go on and blah, 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 but shut up and listen to what the other person is saying. Not just let them talk, but listen. Some good advice, and not really for the scope of this discussion, is to really practice active listening. There's a lot of online resources for that. And you need to listen to the nonverbal clues. It's not just what's the person saying, but how are they acting? How do they look? What's the expression on their face? So listen to those nonverbal clues. It's very, very important. And lastly, remember it's about exchanging information. Communication is about an exchange. You can't have an exchange if it's one way. Listen. Another thing that we all probably need to do better at is conciseness. And I struggle to get through this slide quickly, ironically. Say what you need to say as effectively and efficiently as possible. Never repeat or elaborate. I think the most common problem we have with conciseness is we say something, often very well, and then we go, well, maybe I need to reemphasize that or repeat it or qualify it or elaborate on it. So, you need to not repeat yourself and not elaborate. Also, consciously, I always get a tongue twister on this, consciously seek conciseness. So be aware of how concise you're being and improve it at all times. Learn when to stop, which I'll do, and move to the next slide. Probably the most important thing in business communication is your attitude, right? How you communicate means more oftentimes than what you communicate. We're seeing this in some of the online or some of the media interviews of people in this COVID-19 pandemic. The people that people want to listen to and trust, it often has less to do with what they're saying. They may all be presenting the same facts, but the attitude with which they present the facts, the confidence, the knowledge, the empathy they show towards their audience, that impacts more whether people are going to listen and get the message than those that not. And use that as a way to do it. So watch the nightly news, watch an interview, watch the talking heads, and think about which one you're listening to and which one you're not. And it has so much to do with attitude and less to do with what people are saying. So, it's really important that you go into a communication with the proper positive attitude. Okay, slides in business communication, meetings specifically, we use PowerPoint slides, right? That's what we do. And the role of slides in communication really is a spectrum. And the two ends of that spectrum for me are, one end is documentation. It's there, it's detailed, it's very image and word heavy. It's a way to review these details. It's a way to go through all the details with the audience. But more importantly, often a very detailed documentation set of slides is a reference for after the presentation. After you've spoken, it's something that people can go back and read and learn from, right? Or maybe somebody that wasn't even there can read and learn from. So that's one end of the spectrum. And in technical discussion, communication, often we make documentation slides. On the whole other end of the spectrum, the slide is just an oratory aid, right? It's there to draw and keep attention. It's very image heavy, hopefully good, powerful images. It's used to emphasize the key points, and it helps guide the conversation. It's kind of signposts or mileposts through the conversation, so both the speaker and the audience know where they are. And of course, the ultimate use of slides and oratory as an oratory aid are TED Talks. So if you've ever sat and watched a TED Talk, talk about proper attitude and things we're not going to discuss about pacing and voice variants, and they train those people very, very well. But one other thing that they do is they don't have really heavy slides. They've got slides that aid their conversation, that emphasize the key points. That's what they're there for. So those are the two extremes. Every meeting is going to be somewhere probably in between those two. And as an example, the slide on the left is from a training class, right? It's very detailed, and it's meant to convey a huge amount of information and serve as a resource for the person afterwards. The one on the right is from a pitch we did on our company does a lot of different things. One of them is hydrogen fuel cell hardware. This is a blower for a hydrogen fuel cell. So we were doing a presentation to people that might be interested in our product. So it was really about getting their attention. So we just have the key points we want them to walk away from. This is our solution. Nice graphics, spent some time making things look good and really stand out on the page. Okay, so that's kind of a review of how to have a meeting, how to communicate in business, kind of a very high level. So let's move on to getting ready for our online meeting. And that image on the right there is my office. I'm sitting in this chair, moving this mouse right now, looking at this monitor, which you can see me taking the picture there, which is pretty funny. And you can see me look up, right, because my slideshow is here. I'm looking there, and this is my computer. I've got my headphones right there for me. I got my coffee, and when I need it, I got my microphone and my light. So we'll talk more about some of the things on my desk. So your setup is really important. This is what you're walking into the online meeting with. These days, what's changed, what's very important, is your camera. You got to have a good camera. Invest in a quality one. It needs to be clear. It needs to be focused. It needs to handle a wide dynamic range of light. We call that high dynamic range camera. And what that really means is if I've got a bright light behind me and my face is relatively dark, I can see the same at in the camera. They look at the same light level. Now I've got lights facing me, so you can't really see the HDR capability of my camera. But this image from the website, and I've given the link below, kind of from a website I found that had some good pictures, kind of shows on the left. This is the image that maybe we might prefer. It's a little fuzzy. She probably looks a little younger. But the one on the right is more her. It's more realistic. It shows more of who she is, and that's the preferred one. The other thing to really look at is if you don't have a good camera, and if you're watching this still in the middle of everything, where there's some shortages of some key equipment, you got an old laptop or you don't have a web camera, fine. You probably have a good phone. Use your phone. Most of these online meeting programs allow you to log in twice. Use your computer to view the screen, to view people's faces, to look at the slides people are sharing or share your own slides. But use your phone as your microphone as well as your camera. And I recommend that you either make a stand or buy a tripod, and just Google homemade phone stand, and you can see all sorts of ways to use cardboard or even toilet paper rolls to make a stand for your pad or your phone. And many of my employees have opted for that. They don't use online meetings a lot, and so they just use their phone as their camera and their microphone, and it works just great. And they're on their computer for everything else. Position and angle are really important. We're going to talk about this more as time goes by. Um, it's where you look when you're in a meeting, and you want to look down, not up, and you want to be at the right distance. And we'll give a lot of good examples of that. But I was in a meeting the other day that was later in the evening, and people were violating this position and angle all over the place, and it didn't show them well, right? And these are very intelligent, capable people, and it just didn't come across well. They need to be in the right position with the right camera angle to convey what they want to convey. Lighting's really, really important. You want your light in front and not behind. So with the high dynamic range of my camera turned off and shining a light on the picture that used to be behind me, you can see my face is very dark. This is very common. I think if I go to a meeting with 10 people online, I would say 3 of those people have an image like the one on the left. The one in the middle is with the high dynamic range turned on. It's okay. You can definitely see my face. It's not distracting. The light's a little bright in the back, so it's a little distracting. The one on the far right is what you want. You want the face to be lit so they can see your expression and see you. The background is just that. It's a background. Okay, use headphones, please, for audio. Audio is really important. We talked a lot about camera. We're going to talk even more about what's going on in the camera. But if they can't hear you, it doesn't matter. And a lot of people don't like to have things in their ears or over their ears, so they use the microphone and the speaker on their laptop. And it really is awkward for everybody else. We hear a lot of background noise. We'll hear fans. We'll hear your phone vibrating on your table. And your audio is just not as good, no matter how good your mic is. So you should use an over-ear boom mic. I like these rather than the kind that actually enclose your ears. They sit on the outside. Lets my ears breathe. Earbuds, high-quality earbuds work as well. It's very common these days. In fact, I've seen recording artists that are making music at home. They just use their AirPods as their microphone, and it's quite amazing the dynamic range and the quality of those. I recommend that you don't use Bluetooth for a very critical meeting because you don't want your battery to go dead or you don't want to lose a Bluetooth connection. So, I always use a USB connected headphone use your phone. If you don't have something good for your computer, or you don't have the ability to plug a microphone into your computer, or you don't know how, just plug it into your phone and use that. But please don't use the mic and speaker on your computer. The quality is really, really low. So let's move on to your computer and your network. And a lot of us don't have a lot of choices here, but if you do, make some changes. You need enough horsepower to multitask, right? So we're not just in a meeting. We're running video. We're doing audio. We're seeing other people's video, and we may be sharing an application that we want to show people. Maybe it's PowerPoint. Maybe it's an engineering application that's very heavy computationally. So make sure you have enough horsepower. And again, a solution to that is moving your video and audio to your phone and using your computer just to view things and share the screen. That can help. You also need a big enough pipe to be heard. Now, it's nice to have the video. There's no question of that. But at a minimum, you should have good sound quality when you turn all your video off. If you turn all your video off and you or other people still sound like it, then it's not good. You need to find another solution, even to the point of maybe a couple of our employees, when we sent them home, they just couldn't get good internet in their house. So we got a hotspot from one of the wireless providers, right? So not a phone that had a hotspot. We just went and bought a dedicated hotspot. It basically becomes a Bluetooth that connects through LTE. And that's worked quite well. It's not as good as a high-speed internet connection, but it's good enough for them to get good video and to be heard, which is the most important thing. Also, let's talk about your real background. What's behind me? It's your frame, right? It's a background. It's a frame. It's not what you're trying to do. It's what is behind you. It's not what we don't want it to be is a garbage dump, which is basically what we see right here. And I've been on meetings where people go in and the bed is a mess and there's dirty clothes or clean clothes piled up on it and there's boxes everywhere. It doesn't have to be clean, but it sure does help if it's somewhat clean. All right. So ideally, you want to go blank or go subtle. The thing about your background is distraction is the enemy. They want you focused on you, your face, not on what's behind you. Make sure there's no motion or bright lights behind you. This is a major problem, like a window or maybe a pendulum clock. Now you can see I've got stuff behind me. I've got pictures. I've got some artwork and some of my toys behind me. It says who you are, but I'm not shouting it out, right? It's kind of subtle. So now that we're done talking about the real backgrounds, let's talk about virtual backgrounds. So this would be my preferred virtual background. This is from Star Trek. I like Star Trek. I want people to know that I like Star Trek. It's a great conversation starter. But it's a TV show, right? Maybe your favorite TV show is this. Maybe this is the background you want. Maybe you're a Simpsons fan. You can be sitting on the Simpsons couch. Or maybe the classic, I'd rather be on a beach background, right? But the problem with virtual backgrounds is they need to be professional. Distraction is still the enemy. And you really want to use it as a marketing opportunity to highlight your company and what you do. And if you can't do those things, you should just go neutral. And one of the best is just, there's some generic rooms that you can put up behind you and get rid of your background. This is an example of one of the ones we use at our company. It shows some 3D printing and some aerodynamic work that we've done. This is probably the most popular one that I show. It shows the front of our building with a nice little tree. It's all yellow. It's got some nice colors and doesn't distract, right? And kind of sits behind me while I talk. Same with our lobby. It's a really popular one, as well as a hallway at our office. So those are really good. So that's virtual backgrounds. Now let's kind of switch about us. We talked about what's around you. Now let's talk about how we look and perform. So we don't want the guy sitting there with the cup balanced on his belly in a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, right? Appearance is everything. What you wear. You want to dress for success. And that rule is true before COVID-19 and it's true after COVID-19. So you want to, when you look, I don't have to repeat. These are things that people have been saying for decades or maybe even years or hundreds of years. You got to dress for success. Put on perfume or cologne in the beginning of the day. Treat your online meetings like face-to-face meetings when it comes to appearance, because your attitude and your commitment to the conversation come across in what you wear. So I say, as fun as it is to be wearing pajamas for 2 months, no to pajamas when you're doing online meetings. It's also about posture, right? It's about how you sit. When you lean back like this, it's like, I wish this meeting was over. When you're leaned forward and engaged, I care. I'm engaged. I really care about what's going on. Listening, really leaning in, and it's got to be real. Most of us aren't good actors, so if we're faking it, it's going to show. But really, let your body show what you're feeling. Let your body show that you should be interested, so show that it's interested. If you roll your eyes, they can see it. Look cheerful, positive, happy. Don't look glum and depressed, because people can see that. Again, we're communicating through these nonverbal clues just as much as we are through what we say. The next thing that you need to do is know your tool. What I like to do, so first off, I looked at an online resource of listing all the different online conference tool things out there. And there were 116 two-way audio and video online meeting tools. 116. So we're familiar with the most common ones: Zoom, WebEx, Teams, which is what we use. It's Microsoft has become very popular. GoToMeeting, of course, is very good. But pretty much every major tech company out there, communication company out there, has one. Um, Facebook just introduced a business one. Google has a business one. AWS, Adobe. There's tons of them out there. So you may be used to just don't be that person that goes, oh, I only know how to use Zoom. And I was on a very important meeting this week where a lot of people that aren't used to doing online meetings were on. They've gotten used to Zoom. They know how to use Zoom. This was in Teams, and they really struggled with interacting during the meeting because they just didn't know the tools. So you need to look at the meeting invites. So what I like to do is when I get a meeting invite, and I know it's going to be online, I look at the invite to see which program it's using. Is it using Teams? Is it using Zoom? Is it using WebEx? Is it going to use one of these other tools? And if it is using one of these other tools, I make sure that I've downloaded the program onto my phone or my computer before I get started. And I test it. Most of these programs have the ability for you to test it, to talk to a robot or something and make sure it all works. And poke around and explore before I get to the meeting. It can make all the difference in the world and avoid that 15 minutes of fumbling around while everybody's getting settled. So I really recommend that. Know your tool. The other is to practice. This is important. How you communicate is important to your business, right? So you should invest in it. Maybe get a practice buddy. You can ask a colleague for feedback, both practicing and in real meetings, right? How did I do? How did it look? You can also record these things like I'm doing right now. So you can record it and watch it and improve it. It may not be perfect. It may not make you perfect doing the practice, but one of the things that practicing really helps us do is just be more relaxed and more natural, on the camera, talking to strangers, right? So the more we practice, the more natural we are, and that's an important part of our attitude. So I really recommend that as a tool to get better at these things. All right, so let's kind of change gears a little bit. We talked about, some basics of meetings. We've talked about your setup. We've talked about things you need to do to be better in a meeting. Let's talk about when you're in the meeting, how you can get value from the meeting itself. So how do you conduct a meeting? And they're getting big. I mean, I got this off the internet, but I've been in meetings with this many people. It's a lot of people. So make sure you start with a goal-driven agenda. That's meetings 101. Minimize the chit-chat at the start. It's important that you have a little bit of chit-chat, get to know each other, connect. But when it's time to start the meeting, start the meeting. Don't go too long. 2 or 3 minutes. Stop the chit-chat. Get going. Manage the time. Don't let one person talk too much. Don't go on a topic too long. This is, again, meetings 101. Nothing unique about online. When you finish, wrap up with a summary and action items. That's really key as well. Now, none of these are really new, right? There's nothing unique about these rules for a online meeting. The problem is because we're online, sometimes we kind of forget that we're in a meeting and we forget these rules. So that's why they're here as a reminder. So mute. I think the worst part of online meetings, and this isn't getting any better. It's been 5 weeks for me working from home. I screw up on mute all the time. In fact, I was teaching this class and I screwed up on mute. It's a major problem. It's a part of the online meeting world. We talk while on mute. We chew while we're off mute. And we also do this thing with touchscreen mute where we reach out and we click the screen to go on and off, and it's really annoying. Or we tilt the screen forward so we can reach it. It's kind of annoying. So what I recommend is people practice their mute quick draw and be mute aware. Just always be conscious of, am I muted? Am I not muted? Am I muted? Am I not muted? And in a long meeting where you should be on mute, right? So we don't hear some of the stuff you've heard while I've been recording this in the background. We want to be on mute when we're not talking so we can hear. But we also want to be back off mute when we need to be. So practice your mute quick draw. Please. Okay. Well, how do we effectively communicate in a meeting? So how do we accomplish this in an online meeting? So one is you need a facilitator. So you don't have that, I'm in a meeting room, I can see everybody, I can see their body language. So somebody kind of has to facilitate things and make sure that things keep flowing. Also, when you're talking, it's really important that you stop and pause and make sure that you give other people a chance to say something. This is a problem in real meetings as well as online meetings. But in a real meeting, it's pretty easy to talk over somebody and interrupt them. It can be difficult sometimes because the technology in an online meeting, sometimes it's become kind of difficult to get your word in edgewise. Also, raise your hand. Um, you can do that in the video. They may not see it in the video. Most online tools have a raise hand function that says, hey, I want to talk. If you don't, use the chat to say, I would like to speak. I would like to answer that. I would like to comment. And also use the chat, right? So chat's a way to do the nonverbal stuff that you would do in a face-to-face meeting. Like you can tell when somebody wants to talk by the way they're squirming in their chair, or they're leaning forward and they're sighing, or they're doing something that gives you a clue that they want to say something. You can't see that even with the camera, so use chat to do that communication. So it's really important that you leverage these things. The other thing that I always talk about is sharing the desktop. So one of the most powerful things in online meetings is the ability for me to share an application, whether that's a Microsoft application, a PowerPoint, or maybe a technical tool, right? What a lot of people like to do is they like to share the apps window only, right? They don't want to share their whole desktop, a whole screen, for a very simple reason. If you remember our friend Brett Hume, who did a screenshot of some tweet that he was making fun of, he had a tab in there that was looking at sexy vixen vinyl set. So I don't know what you're doing on your computer, but if you might have fear that people will see that, that may keep you from sharing your whole desktop. Probably more common in a business environment, I'd like to think more common in a business environment, is the fact that you and your coworkers are being snarky and sending messages back and forth that may pop up in the bottom right-hand corner that say, are you done with that idiotic meeting, or making fun of the boss, right? We don't want those to show up, and this has actually happened to me. I was showing how to use chat, and a message like that came up. So what's the solution, right? We don't want these things to show up. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. It's pretty simple. Close down your other apps and turn off notifications. Just if you're going to be doing a lot of online meetings, we're going to have to do away with these other things. So before I start an important online meeting, I turn off every other app except the apps I need for that meeting, especially my email. And then when it's time for me to share my desktop, I share my desktop, not just the window. And that makes a big difference in efficiency and getting across what you want to get across. Another tool to be aware of, especially for technical discussions, is whiteboards. Most of the online tools have a whiteboard app, but if they don't, share your desktop and just open up, say, Microsoft Word or PowerPoint and use that as your whiteboard. You don't have to have a whiteboard app in order to do whiteboarding with other people. And most programs not only let you share your screen, but they let other people drive the mouse. So you can give permission to people to drive the mouse and comment on the whiteboard. You need to have that to use, say, Microsoft Word, but if you have a whiteboard app, that's kind of built in. So check that out. If you're not using whiteboards, you should. So I've alluded to this, but I want to specifically talk about it, which is hearing from talked over people. The best way to hear from people that want to say something is to just take a pause. Don't just keep talking. Another thing that happens in online meetings is and phone and telephone meetings as well, is this. People start talking at the same time. Person A and person B start talking at the same time, and they both go, no, you go, no, you go, you go, no, you go, and eventually somebody's going to not be polite or not be slightly less polite, and they're going to go ahead and start talking. Don't forget about the person that didn't start talking. So person A starts talking. If person B still wants to say something, make sure that they get a chance to do that. Also, I already mentioned this. You can help the people running the meeting by asking to speak in chat. And if you're running a meeting, if you haven't heard from somebody, they may be reluctant to speak up. They may have had a chance to speak up. Ask the question. We have not heard from you, Pat. Get their input. You can't, again, see their body language that they're fidgeting and unhappy that they're not being able to talk. So you need to make that possible for them. So that's the bulk of what I wanted to share as far as lessons and things like that. So let's kind of sum it up with 10 do's, 10 don'ts, and what was 10 and is now 15 tips. So here's the do's, things you should do. or the don'ts. Actually, start with don'ts. So number one is don't backlight. Make sure that you don't have a shiny object behind you, a window behind you, a bright light behind you. It's very distracting, and people are just going to look at it, not you. Of course, don't forget mute. We talked about that. It's very, very important. Also having something moving behind you. Here in Arizona, we all have ceiling fans, and when you have your laptop tilted back and the camera's pointing up, it's got a great view of your ceiling fan over your shoulder. And this is my son's bedroom, and sometimes I'll do a meeting in there, and it's really annoying with that thing spinning around and with the clock speeds on the cameras. It looks really weird. It may be going backwards. So just don't show the ceiling fan or the pendulum clock behind your head. Don't clutter your background. This is my office back at the office, and I've got way too much stuff behind me. It's very distracting. Don't talk without taking a pause. Let other people get a word in edgewise. It's monotonous, but also it can be really annoying. And it doesn't let people talk. This is covered up with my video, but it says don't apologize for dogs, kids, or spouse. So I don't know how well the microphone's picking it up or not, but you probably hear my family around me, my dogs, my kid, my wife. I didn't stop and apologize. Oh, I'm sorry about the dog. Everybody's dealing with it, and it's disruptive to stop. And there's nothing worse than the middle of a thought, the dog starts barking, and somebody stops, and they apologize for the dog, and they yell at the dog, and I'm so sorry, and it goes on and on. Just, it is what it is. Just let it be. Don't move around while talking as well. One of the things that I've really had to struggle with is I'll talk and do this, and it probably is annoying in a face-to-face meeting, but it's really annoying when you're on a camera. So try to avoid moving around while you're talking. Hand gestures are fine. Nodding your head is fine, but try to keep the body motions down to a minimum. I went to a meeting once with somebody that had a standing desk online, and he is a hyper guy. And it was so distracting through the whole meeting. He was literally jumping from foot to foot. And I just wanted to tell him to stay still. Don't eat. It happens. You could be having a lunch meeting or a dinner meeting, but when you're not, I have had people with their microphone off mute eat an apple while in a meeting. It's really annoying. And then don't do it. Big problem for me and a lot of people is working in another window. So I'll be in a meeting, I'll have email up on the other window, maybe LinkedIn, maybe Facebook, and I'm paying attention to that and not the meeting. So it's just, you wouldn't do that. Hopefully, well, sometimes we do. We bring our phones to meetings and we're looking at our phone instead of paying attention. So one of the things I've been trying to do in real meetings is turning my phone upside down during the meeting so I don't look at it, and don't open my computer. Same with online meetings, right? You need to keep your phone, other windows closed. And don't talk about the pandemic too much, right? We're all stressed out. We're all dealing with it. We've kind of covered it, right? Make sure you acknowledge it. Make sure you show empathy that's real and valid. But then move on. Unless the meeting's about the pandemic, let's get to business, right? We have plenty of time to talk about the pandemic. Let's talk about do's. I like to put speaker notes on another screen. Some people like to print them out. I like to put them up on a screen behind my camera, so I'm looking at them while I'm talking to the camera. It's really handy. It's not really a teleprompter, but it really helps me. Remember, you're always on the camera. In a long meeting, you might forget and you start picking your nose or doing other things. We want to avoid that at all costs, right? Nobody wants to see that. Also, the audio lag, and this varies from program to program or connection to connection. But when you're talking maybe with people overseas, it can be even longer. So make sure when you take a pause, you take a long enough pause for the audio lag that you're dealing with. A lot of times you'll say, so-and-so, what do you think? And they got to take themselves off mute, and then there's a lag. If you don't give them a good chunk of time, they're not going to have a chance to speak. Look at the camera. I don't always do that. In fact, when I think, I tend to look away or look down. But try to look at the camera. Try to emote into the camera. Pause and ask for questions and feedback. Meeting 101, right? Very important in an online meeting because you don't see that body language. We already talked about this, but I'm saying it again. Share your desktop, not the app window. Have an agenda. Again, standard meeting practice. Take time to personally connect. We don't want to have a lot of chit chat. We don't want to have a lot of talking about the virus, but we do want to connect, right? That's what we're missing. That's why we have face-to-face meetings. So take that time. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but take some time to connect. And it may not have to be chit chat, right? You can connect discussing a technical thing. It's about how you connect and how you show emotion. It doesn't have to be frivolous discussion to connect. Always remember to turn off your camera when appropriate. We don't want to be, this is a posed picture, but we don't want to be that poor woman that was on a Zoom meeting that went to the bathroom and thought her camera was off and everybody got to see her drop her trowel. So yeah, make sure you turn off your camera when appropriate. And know your audience. Again, meeting 101. Who are you talking to? What do they care about? How do they communicate? Make sure you know your audience. All right, let's talk about some tips. One tip, and this is going to get a little complicated, but give it a try, is watch as a guest. So if I log in as myself into most meeting apps, I only get one. I can't really see myself, right? I gotta log in as a guest. So I invite to an important meeting. I'll invite my Gmail account, my personal account, to the meeting, and then I log in through a browser on my computer in another window into that Gmail account and into the meeting that way, and then I can see what other people see, not what I see, but what other people see, and that can be really handy. Of course, I don't have the sound on, but at least the visual I can see. So I can see, I'm mirrored correctly, I'm moving my head correctly, I'm lit correctly, all that kind of stuff. The other thing I like to do is take written notes, and I'm a horrible note taker, and my handwriting is atrocious. But, I keep a piece of paper under my keyboard. There it is right here. And I just write stuff down while people are talking. And it keeps me from doing the keyboard click thing, which, some meetings I'll still do that because it's just a more efficient way to do it. But I'll try to mute myself when I'm typing. But the other thing that's nice about a written note is it shows you're paying attention. If you ever hear typing, are you taking notes, or are you reading your email and answering emails? If you're writing things down, they know you're paying attention. They know what they just said is important to you enough for you to write it down. So it's a critical one. I think it's something we should do more of. Go to the meeting. Don't just finish up what you were doing on your computer and then, I got to go to a meeting, and just turn on Zoom or Teams or GoToMeeting or whatever it is you use. Get up, go get some coffee, go to the restroom, take a walk around the house, go pet the dog, go outside in the backyard for a few seconds, and then go to the meeting. Some people that have maybe a portable computer, and I've done this as well, is I actually pick up the portable computer and I go in a different room and have the meeting in a different room, so that I feel like it's a meeting, right? I'm not just sitting at my desk doing what I normally do. Dress for success. We talked about that to a large extent. I just wanted to include this really cheesy stock photo. That's the only reason why that's in there. Now, it really is important, worth repeating. Dress for success. And utilize the space behind your camera. We talked about notes, but you can also put hints and things like, I have a little note behind my camera that says how to turn mute on and off on various programs, and I use that. Or reminders of 3 things I want to cover in the meeting, or don't forget that the mute is on, or don't forget that the camera is on. Use that space behind you as a tool. So next tip is, these are the ones I added after presenting the class. I got some feedback, and I don't know if this is directed at me, but I've groomed recently, so maybe it was. But groom yourself. We can see pretty close. I mean, it's pretty accurate. And a lot of times we're going like this for various reasons. We're looking up at a screen, or we're using our bifocals, which I'll talk about. And I don't want to see your nose hairs. Nobody wants to see my nose hairs. No, I don't want to see yours. Same for leaning the back, the bushy armpits, whatever it is. Groom. It hasn't been too bad, but somebody brought it up, and I think it is worth mentioning. Get computer glasses if you can. I don't wear bifocals, so I don't have this problem. I do this. So I guess this is kind of the same thing, is I'll look at the distance above my glasses and I'll look below. So the problem with that is you get the head tilt while you're trying to figure something out. So very often in a meeting, when the meeting starts, those with bifocals will be going like this, and it's just kind of awkward. You look kind of awkward when you do it. So if you're going to be looking at the computer screen, and you can, I'm not an optometrist, I don't know if it's even possible, but I think it is, get glasses that just work for here, that aren't bifocals, so you're not going like this all the time, back and forth. Then you're trying to avoid that chin cam effect. Also, you're going to sneeze, you're going to cough. I can't believe how many times people don't do this. Don't just mute yourself. Turn your camera off. It's usually a click, click, right? Turn your camera off. Turn your microphone off. Sneeze. Cough. I don't know. Pick your nose. Yawn. Whatever it is. Nobody's really going to notice that you turned everything off. Definitely do that. Ran into this in a meeting, and I didn't really think about it until some people were struggling with it. So most of these online programs assume that even if you're using a phone to dial in, you're looking on the screen. So we always put in the chat or on the screen, *6 to unmute and mute. But people listening from their phone that may not have the screen on their phone working for whatever reason, maybe they're driving, they can't do that. So you need to verbally remind them what it is to, if they want to speak, it's *6. It changes from program to program, but oftentimes it's *6 to turn it on and turn it off. So say that. Don't just put it in the chat or on the screen, because they may not have chat or screen. And then the last new tip, this was a really good one, is if it's an important meeting, it's good to have an assistant. So you're talking, you're managing the meeting, you're communicating, right? You're facilitating communication, or you're the one that's communicating. You don't want to deal with the fact that, Fred didn't realize he's off mute and he's talking to his 3-year-old about why they need to do their homework. It happens. It's no big deal, but it's distracting. So it's very easy for this assistant. You don't want to stop what you're doing and mute that person. The assistant's job is to do that. The assistant's job is to look at the chat, right? And notice comments or questions or complaints in the chat, and then interject and say, hey, Fred is having trouble hearing you, Mark. Can you move your boom mic down so we can all hear you? Also help. There may be somebody that's not maybe as familiar with the program, and they want to know, how do I turn my camera off? How do I change my background? So having an assistant that's not involved in, if it's an important meeting, again, you don't want to do this for every meeting, but it's an important meeting, have an assistant that's not involved in the discussion there to assist the attendees. Really handy tip. So that is the bulk of it. Nope, I got 5 more. I'm sorry, I got 5 more tips. This got out of order. These were in the original presentation. So number 1 is be a leader. It may not be your meeting, but if no one's leading the meeting, if nobody knows how to do an online meeting and you do, step up, be that leader. That doesn't mean you need to dominate the discussion. You're just facilitating and leading the communication. Prop up your laptop to avoid chin cam. I have a stack of old notebooks that I put mine on, so it's quite high, and the monitor that I have my camera on that I'm using right now is actually sitting on a biography of Marcus Aurelius, which is a good use for a biography of Marcus Aurelius. A biography about a Stoic, not very exciting. Get a meeting buddy to practice with. If this is important, you're in sales maybe, or maybe you do a lot of communication with customers for various reasons. You need to be good at this. So get a meeting buddy to practice with and give you feedback. If you need to leave early, try not to stop the whole conversation and say, I'm so sorry I have to go. This is why I have to go. And no, just send a quick thing in chat that says, I got to go to a 5:30 meeting. This is fantastic. I'll follow up with you, Fred, blah, blah, blah. Type it in the chat. Maybe if there is a pause and you can interrupt, just say, I got to go. Thanks, guys, and just hang up. Don't have a long conversation about you leaving. And lastly, connect with those people in the rectangles, right? You want to, we talked about this earlier, you're replacing the face-to-face meeting and that personal connection you create in a face-to-face meeting. And that's not about, it's about how you talk, it's about how you listen, it's about how you respond, the empathy, true empathy, true caring that you show, even for technical things. Your interest in a technical topic that is just as important in creating that connection as anything else is. So that's all 15 tips. And let's do a quick review. So number one is invest time and money on the right equipment and setup. I'm going to be here a while. It's worth the investment. Learn the tools and practice. Looks, posture, and facial expressions really matter. Somebody needs to manage the meeting. Why not you? Let everyone speak. It's very important. And stop mute abuse. And the most important thing is to just practice good, not just online, but good communication skills. And that's it for the meeting. We normally stop here and ask for questions, which is the next slide. But since this is a recording, we'll stop right here. I want to thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions or want to reach out to me, it's eric.miller@padtinc.com. Our website is www.padtinc.com. And we hope to hear from you, and I hope you found this useful. Hi there, me again for a little bit of a commercial at the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope it helps you make your online meetings better and more productive. If you did like it, I'm going to ask for two things. The first is that you share it. Let people know that you got something out of this and that it's worth your time, and put it on social media, send it in emails. Just let people know about the YouTube link and let them watch it and learn from it. I hope that you found enough value out of this to share it with others, and hope that they find value as well. The second ask is, well, for money. We've got a little bit of a need to fund things that's changed because of COVID-19. Normal funding sources are not what they used to be. So we're asking that you make a donation, totally voluntary, of $25 if you thought this was a valuable use of your time. If it is, we'll use that money to sponsor future Tech Council events that are informative to the tech community here in Arizona, as well as everybody around the world. So please do take the time to click on the link. You can use your credit card, or if you have a PayPal account, you can use that. And just send $25 our way, and we'll roll it back into future things. So have good meetings out there, and please stay safe.